the play takes place in the backdrop of World War One during the Battle of Somme in 1916. It looks at more modern topics of homosociality and the likes of that, the bond between men, trying to break down that idea of how important masculinity is, of toxic masculinity, trying to encourage men to connect with each other and stop trying to, be so aggressive in war.
Yeah.
Yeah,
aggressive in anything, really.
No,
that's good, isn't it? It's
tenderness, really.
Something that we've seen a lot of, unfortunately, in the past.
Well, yeah, noticed a lot on things like TikTok and stuff. We noticed, and it's something that's been rising a lot, that anger in the world and stuff, and encouraging that warlike nature. And it was just something that became quite apparent to me about a year ago, and so I thought it was something I should really write about, homosociality.
Yeah. So are you two in it, Joe and Charlie?
Yes.
Yeah. I play Richard Lawton, who is the oldest of the group of lads from Salford, and he's kind of seen as the leader. They all look up to him, these lads. But I think deep down also Richard, he isn't really prepared for what's to come, and he's kind of got to take these lads by the scruff of the neck and kind of guide them through what's to come, even though he doesn't know himself, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
When I've, because I'm new to the cast, when I've been in rehearsals, my thoughts of it has been like, he is quite proud to be there, but he's also knowing that this group of lads that he's with might not make it without him. So he's kind of making sure that, right, I can't just look after myself, but I've got to make sure these lads are all right, and create that togetherness of what they had back then, which was a group of lads who sometimes they wouldn't get on, but they'd always be together and they'd be there for one another and they'd fight for each other. And that's kind of what Richard has to kind of, the other lads bring it as well. It's that thing of, I'm the oldest, I've been leader when I was at schools and captain of the football team. I've got to bring the little experience of leadership qualities I've got into this group of lads.
Yeah. Difficult situation. It must have been terrible in the First World War, because the people signed up, didn't they, and didn't know what they were signing up for till they got there and realised the horrors of it all.
Yeah, that's one of the big things in it, really, brotherhood and how it's broken down for the time in the trenches.
So, are you in it as well, Charlie?
Oh, I am, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, I play Harry, who is, funnily enough, the youngest of the boys, who have been all joined up together, the Salford pals, as we call them. And it's interesting, the character of Harry. His motivation for joining up is one of proving himself not a coward. He's given a white feather, which, as we know, is was a big movement during the First World War, particularly while they were still volunteering. It was a volunteer army at first before conscription got imposed, and it was, interestingly enough, set up by a man, but women would go around giving white feathers to men who they saw in civilian clothing and not uniform, as a way of shaming them into being into joining up. And so that's the catalyst for Harry to go to war and sign up in the first place, and it's really the catalyst behind his entire group of friends to go with him. He is the youngest. He is very much caught hook, line and sinker by this myth of masculinity, It is a man's job to fight and die, and to be strong and tough, and that is the way as a man that you show how much people mean to you and how you present yourself in the world, you know, as a good man with violence and strength. And he's, you know, that's all on one side. Obviously, there's a lot of lightness in the play too. Harry's probably one of the funnier of the characters.
Absolutely, yeah, he's the Joker.
There's a lot of banter between the blokes. They do a lot of messing around, and so there's this really interesting contrast that's been very fun for me to play, of the lighter side, the more fun, and the sort of darker fascination with strength and not showing any weakness, which I think is really kind of the sort of prevalent mode of masculinity in current day. You only need to be on the internet for a matter of minutes before you find some man on a podcast telling you how to be man and telling a lot of rude and bawdy jokes to each other in between, telling you how masculinity's in crisis and how all the men are weak and not really men anymore.
I think it's something we touched on quite a lot, though, isn't it? Like, you know, your character is certainly the most, like, he is the most intoxicated by the idea of being masculine, but then he's also the best singer, and, you know, he plays the ukulele, and he's always belting his heart out during these songs, isn't he, and encouraging the lads to sing and dance with him, which is quite an interesting, really, counterpart.
And I think, like, you know, it's that myth of, like, machismo that was one of the things that led to the tragedy that was World War One, and how in places like Salford and others across the country, across Europe, whole entire communities were destroyed when their men went off to war, and for the most part didn't come back. You know, we lost a generation because of this idea of having to prove your strength, to go to war, to fight for your country. And you know, hopefully people who come to see the play, it gives them a chance to reflect, have a look at their own lives, and reflect on how those same ideas might be affecting them negatively.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, the play isn't just all sad either, is it? You know, we have a lot of, like, fun in there. There's a birthday in the trench where they experience that sort of, they're trying to bring their home life from Salford back in, you know, the stuff that they would have done at home, you know, drinking and stuff. And, you know, Harry is really enthusiastic about trying to give those lads a taste of home. You know, there's a lot of, as I said before, Harry singing and dancing, everybody getting up and dancing together in a way that isn't really talked about as much as it is. There are videos of it online, but it's sort of blocked out by the whole idea of men, like, marching across the field and stuff. But there is this, online you see a lot of videos of, you know, men dressing up in, like, female clothing and stuff and dancing together and just having fun. And that's something that we're really trying to bring into it, this idea that, you know, look, back then these men who were absolutely, definitely, you know, double hard blokes, weren't they, you know, fighting for their country, were then able to relax with each other to the point where they could do what they needed to do to forget about the war, and that was just enjoying themselves, really, you know, singing and dancing and just forgetting where they are, really, isn't it? Because I can imagine it would have been quite a shock to them, really, going over there, and really it's nothing like you were expecting. You know, you're expecting to be there and to walk over your enemies, and then there you are in a muddy field.
Especially with how it was brought up to be, and it was glorified for people, and they wanted, you know, they made it out to be go to war, and, you know, rightly so, people are proud, they're brave to do that. But then as soon as the realisation kicks in and they're, you know, in the middle of no man's land, it's very different from what all the posters were about and what the talk was about at the time. And I think that's why, like, this play is quite, I'd say, unique in a way of bringing so many aspects of what's not really talked about. And you see a lot of films, a lot of war films, you never really see, you know, the bonding of lads together and, you know, how everyone's different, feelings, emotionally, and you can see that in this play as well, that some lads aren't really built to be going over the top.
No.
And you'll see it throughout the play, and you know there's hints in there.
Especially
with the characters.
Thomas, there's this idea behind Thomas that he is sort of an undiagnosed autistic for the time period. You know, it wasn't something that would be really approached, and so he's this guy who comes in and he basically supports Richard and teaches him everything that Richard needs to know to be able to lead the men in this environment. And then it's quite a hard hit for him, really. You know, he's constantly having to deal with his OCD and the likes of the loss of Richard, who he has these feelings for that he doesn't quite understand because of his autism and the time period. And it's a very interesting thing of he's expecting to be a full-grown leader and everything, but then he has to sort of block that out for his own smaller issues that he doesn't know why he's having to deal with, and it's really hard on him. He has a lot of monologue speaking to himself, feeling alone because he has lost his best friend and that sort of thing.